Hello, everybody. Welcome. Come on in. I believe we are live. I hope we are live. It's Mercury retrograde, so we never quite know, do we? So hopefully this will go off without a hitch today. Welcome to another episode. We're so excited and thankful that you are here celebrating with us another episode today, because we know that you could be anywhere on the internet watching absolutely anything. And we're just excited that you've chosen to spend some time with us today, whether you're live or on the replay. I want to invite you to take a minute, click the love button, click the share button so that more people can enjoy this show with us today. Also, wherever you're joining us from in the world, again, whether you're live or on the replay, comment down below, say hello, tell us where you're joining from so that we can give you a shout out on the show. My name is Jessica Dugas. I'm an intuitive mentor and your host for this next hour. And this is The Breakthrough. It's the spiritual view for your soul and mind, where we dig deep on today's spiritual hot topics and inspire you with stories of those breakthrough moments that change our lives. So, I have a really important announcement to start off with the show on the show today, and it's something that I want to give you full confidence that we are working on to the best of our ability. So, as most of you all know, our season 1 of The Breakthrough actually broadcasted onto my business page, the Jessica Dugas Intuitive Mentor page. And when we made the decision to continue the show through more seasons, we made this page that you are on now, the Breakthrough Facebook page. Unfortunately, I was doing some maintenance on our website the other day and noticed that we were getting errors on many of our episodes from season 1. And when I went into Facebook to check on those videos and why we couldn't watch them, we now are up to 16 out of 22 episodes that have been removed from Facebook. I have tickets in with Facebook. I've sent them messages, but I just want to assure you guys that if you go back to watch episodes from season 1 and they are not there, we're doing our very best to work on that. We are also, as we do these episodes, we are going to be recording and making sure that they are saved immediately so that we don't lose any more of these episodes, because it just makes me sad. We put so much amazing stuff out there, and I want to make sure that that stuff is able to be accessed by you guys whenever you want them on the website. So just know that if you go to watch some episodes and they're gone, we are working on it. We do have a ticket in with Facebook, and hopefully we will be able to resolve it soon. So with all of that being said, I want to give a little hello to a couple people who are joining us. We have Mary that's joining us from Michigan. Hi, Mary. We have Gina that's joining us. Hi. So excited that you guys have joined us today. Also saying hi to Jamad and Angela. Thank you guys for loving and sharing out this video for us. So of course, we've got to get started with the show, and I want to bring on our fabulous panelists for today. First and foremost, we have our relationship expert on the show. She's a relationship specialist helping us to bring more passion and love into our lives. Everyone, please put your finger on that heart button and welcome our friend Lorianne Davis to the show today. Hi, Lori.
Hi, sorry, had to get my my mic going as usual.
How's Mercury going for you, Lori?
Yeah, it needs to go away.
Yes. I'll agree. I think like I went into this with a positive attitude and really, everything is great, but like some of the tech stuff right now, man, it's just crazy.
Yeah, it wouldn't let me share this anywhere besides my private group. So I'm sorry. I got it into my private group, but it wouldn't let me do it to my personal, at least it's not showing up. So we're just going to keep working around this, and we'll get it all done, and people will see it, and we're just sharing the love anyway.
That's right. It'll be fine. We're just going to if you're watching this on the replay, it's probably because we couldn't share it. We're working on it though. We're working on it.
Yeah.
All right. Next up on our panel today, we have the fabulous Mama Bear Extraordinaire, helping us to work through all of the traumas in our lives. Everyone, please hit the heart button for our friend Siri Ridenauer today. She's coming through the door any minute. There she is. Hi, Siri. How's Mercury going for you? So can you not hear me again?
There you go.
I'm here.
Oh, good. How's Mercury going for you, Siri?
It's just wonderful.
It's a fun time. It's a fun time. It really does. It shows us about ourselves, right? It shows us maybe we need to work on a little patience and a little frustration and things in our lives that we need to work on. So I think that that's always, it's always a positive thing, even if we don't see it as positive. Hey, Greg, just saw Greg popping in as well. Good to see you today as well. So our friend Tara Abram was supposed to join us today too, but sadly Tara woke up this morning with a frog in her throat, and you cannot hear the frog. So we wish Tara feels better really soon, sending you lots of healing vibes and positive energy, and we'll see you next time that you're on, Tara. So without further ado, we need to get to our hot topic today. I want to give a shout out for our hot topic to Jill Celeste from the Celestial Circle. She provided this beautiful quote I saw on Instagram, and it's the basis for our hot topic today. So today we're going to talk about fear. And the quote that Jill put is, "Fear is a signal. If you fear doing something, it means you should do it." So how do you guys feel about that? Do you think that when you feel fear coming up about something in your life, does that automatically mean for you, yeah, this means I should do it. This means I should push through and just go for it. How does that resonate for you, Lori?
Yes and no, which is probably not an unusual answer for me. Because I can think of different circumstances. No change comes from inside of our comfort zone, right? So I'm always telling singles and couples, you got to push outside of your comfort zone. So I do agree with the quote in that respect. I also think there are times though when our intuition kicks in. It depends. Is the fear coming from our mind, or is it coming from deep within, where maybe our intuition is saying, hold on, this isn't right for you. This isn't the right time. Maybe you need to be cautious. So I could really see that you've got to learn to distinguish between, is it intuition talking to you that maybe isn't fear, but maybe it's a little bit of, well, wait a minute, or is it our mind being afraid of growth, afraid to move outside of our comfort zone? And if that's the case, we definitely need to push through that.
I would agree with a lot of that. What about you, Siri? How does this fear quote resonate for you?
I agree with Lori. It's the same thing. It depends on the situation. And you got to listen to whether it's coming from your heart or your head.
Yeah. And so a lot of people have asked, and we've actually had this conversation in my community, Illuminate Your Spirit, before, where, well, how do we know where that fear is coming from? How do we know if it's from our heart or intuition? And it was really apparent for me when I started really communicating with spirit on a very personal level and working on my intuition, that when warnings come up from spirit, or when things come up from spirit that are trying to protect us, that it comes through in a very loving way. It comes through in a very it's not something that you would have like a panic attack and really, really, really strong fear come in, something that makes you feel physically not okay. And so this is something that I've really talked to a lot of people about, that if you are, going in to do something and you feel a fear that like consumes you, and it's something that doesn't, like, not only it's more than just the fear, it's something that kind of takes over and feels feels really bad and wrong. And it's more, like I said, it's more than just the fear. That oftentimes that is not coming from a space that is anything good for you. That is probably something you should question and say that at that point, go, where is this coming from? Why is this fear popping up?
I also think spirit can talk to us in different ways. I remember a time sitting in a parking lot waiting to give my girlfriend her child back. And I was in this empty parking lot waiting for her to get there. And all of a sudden, I felt this panicky feeling. I didn't feel okay. There was nobody around. I remember calling her and saying, I don't know where this is coming from. And she said, I don't know either, but get out of there. Let's meet someplace else. So, how does spirit need to talk to us? Maybe are there times when the only thing we're going to listen to is that sort of fear, and spirit is going, okay, you don't need to be where you are, or something's going on and we're, so that's different than this pervasive, I'm thinking about changing careers, or I'm thinking about doing something new, and I have this all consuming fear, so there's different circumstances. And I think when we really get used to tuning in and listening, we can distinguish the difference.
Right.
And maybe in the meantime, get some help, talk to somebody else about it.
I mean, I think that's wise too, is to if there's ever a time where you feel like, I'm not really sure if my fear here is valid, if it's like, if there's really something to be afraid of, or if I'm just scared because that's my ego popping up, or that's something that, I just don't know where this is coming from. Talking to someone else can really help, and having someone that's not in your energetic bubble say, hey, this is an outside view of what's going on, because it's really easy for us to get wrapped up in our own crap and not be able to distinguish what's going on. Right.
It is. Yes. Yeah.
Have you ever had that happen, Siri, where you've felt a fear, but you haven't been able to really, navigate it, and had to have somebody look in and say, this is what I see that's going on? Have you ever had that happen for you?
Oh, absolutely. When I decided to start my business, I was terrified. And when my mentors keep telling me I have to do lives, that terrifies me to do the lives. But I know it's just my ego, and I have to get past it, and my fear of flubbing up.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a difference, right, between like being in an actual fearful situation. I mean, you're probably going to feel fear pop up if you hear a noise at your door at 2:00 in the morning, something like that is different than the fears that we fear from starting a business, from putting ourselves out there, from writing a book, from, anything where we have to be visible. That visibility fears are so different than, fears of protection and things like that, like of actual, where we're in physical harm's way,
And even kind of looking at it, if we feel uneasy, and like you said, talking to somebody to kind of help you sort through. Maybe starting a business is a good idea, but if you're feeling fear because you're thinking of quitting your full-time job and jumping head into this business that might take longer than you realize to get up and going, some of that fear might be valid. Maybe it's time to do it, but maybe it's time to do it in a different way. So that, maybe that uneasiness is trying to say to you, maybe you have to tweak your plan a little bit. So it could be a message that is positive, and that the way we are interpreting, I agree with you, Jessica. I think it never comes from source in a negative way.
Right.
We interpret that message. So
right.
maybe we interpret that that sort of like put on the brakes a little as fear. And it's just really, guidance from our higher self, or from wherever it is that it's coming from, saying, yeah, do this, but don't do it in a way that maybe it's not going to work out as well for you. Maybe there's some things you need to look at. So there can be a lot to it, and it really unraveling all those pieces would be important.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm glad that we're talking about the different aspects of fear too, because it's one thing we talked about on the show last week, was that sometimes we'll see these memes come up, or these little quotes on Facebook, and they really needed to come with a disclaimer, because it's not like, we're not talking about this kind of fear, we're talking about this kind of fear, and that sort of thing. So anytime you see these things pop up and you feel like this doesn't feel like the right quote for me, it may just mean that it's a different type of thing that they're talking about. So breathe on it before we react. That's some good advice right there. All right, guys. So we have to come into welcoming our guest today. I'm really excited to have someone new to the show on. She's actually a friend of our one of our hosts from last season, Donna Brown. And she is a soul style mentor. I'm really excited to learn about soul style today. And she's going to be sharing her breakthrough story with us. Everybody, please hit the heart button and welcome Kathy Dwyer to the show today. Hi, Kathy. Hopefully she can hear and we're all good. Let's see.
Okay, I think I'm here.
There she is.
Hi, everyone.
It's just delayed today.
Oh, no, it's technology for me.
Gotta find that right button, you know?
I know, exactly.
Oh my gosh. Well, we're excited to have you on today, Kathy, and we would love to have you chime in on our fear quote today. When fear pops up for you, what does that make you think about? Does it mean push through or wait a minute, maybe I should think about this?
Well, first, let me just say thanks for having me. I am excited to be here. This is a new experience for me, so everything is kind of in that learning process. As for fear, I'm with the rest of you. I agree. Unless it becomes like a life-threatening fear, that's different. However, I look at fear a little bit differently. If we think about fear, we use it as an acronym, and the most popular one right now is face everything and rise. But I look at it as false expectations appearing real. So when it's not a life-threatening experience, you know, being robbed or something like that, when you feel fear to do something, for me, I believe fear is belief-based, and that comes from sometimes pre-programmed belief systems. Maybe what we learned as childhood growing up, maybe what we learned from extended family, maybe what we learned from society about what's right, what's wrong, what we should be afraid of, what we should eat, what's going to make us healthy, what's going to make us sick, all of that, rather than tapping in and trusting ourselves. So for me, it means when fear arises, just pause for a moment, take a breath, breathe into that, and ask yourself, what am I really afraid of?
I love that.
I also believe that courage follows fear. So when that fear rises up, what happens is we freeze in that moment. We are unable to think about moving forward. But if we can just pause for a moment, take a breath or two, courage comes up behind us and will propel us through. And I also think it's important to kind of figure out what those beliefs are that we have. And is that belief serving me, or is that belief truly holding me back? So fear, yes, I agree, right up to the point where it's something life-threatening, you know, that sort of thing. But I also feel like we need to understand why we're having that fear and maybe where it's coming from.
I love all of that. And I love how you're talking about too with the, you know, we've obviously talked about the difference between like being robbed and starting a business. But even thinking about courage in both of those instances, you know, if you think about how many people have survived traumatic things like that, like being robbed or something of that nature, and how courageous they were, that like that courage did push them through. And it's the same thing, you know, if you think about, you know, how it pushes us in the traumatic situations, it can push us in the other ones too. And so I love that you brought up courage, because I think that's something really important to think about. So thank you for that. I want to get into your story because I want to make sure we've got lots of time for you today. I would love for you to start us out taking us back to how things were before the breakthrough that you're going to share with us today, and just kind of paint a picture for us about what life was like for you then.
Oh, well, Okay, that's a broad stroke. So I'm going to go way back and just say that I was a child bride and I had my children very early in life, and unforeseen circumstances, that marriage ended very quickly. And then I was single for a while, and then I remarried, and I was married to this man for 25 years. And quite frankly, it was great. I mean, he was a pilot. We had lots of money. We lived in beautiful houses. We traveled all over, everywhere. It was great until it wasn't. And then different things started building up. And we had a young woman. No, she was a child. She wasn't a young woman. She's a young woman now, but she was a child that came to live with us. And she really pushed me into the depths of my darkness. And then she would ever so gently pull me out. And she would say to me, "What's wrong? What's wrong, Grandma?" And if I said, "You did this or you did that," she shoved me back into the darkness. One day I figured it out, that this had nothing to do with her, nothing to do with her previous trauma, nothing to do with any of that. This had to do with me and looking within myself. So I started this process of really diving into the metaphysical world and experiencing who I was and really asking those questions: why, when, how, those kinds of questions. All the time through this comfort zone of my marriage. I became a Reiki master. I became a matrix energetics practitioner. I became a yoga instructor. I started doing workshops in my home. And then it started to have some ripples. And after the fact, I lovingly say, if you looked up midlife crisis in the dictionary, you would see a picture of my former husband. The result of that was the fallout of our marriage. So we ended our marriage, and I literally walked away from the marriage with virtually hardly anything. And on the day that I was packing up my personal belongings to leave, I got a telephone call from an organization asking me to be their keynote speaker at this women's event. And I was not in a place where I felt I could share anything of value with anything. After all, my life was falling apart. So I said to this woman, her name was Anita, and I told her that I was right in the midst of leaving my marriage and I wasn't sure I was the right person for her. And she said to me, "Oh, this is months away. I think you'll be fine." So I said, "Well, I'm going to trust you," and went forward and said I would do it. I left the marriage. I moved into what I considered to be my cave. It was I left this big 3,500 square foot house, moved into a little 1-bedroom apartment. All the furniture I bought was dark. So it was literally like this little cave. And all I could think about is what am I going to say to this group of women? I woke up the day after I moved in there and I was terrified because I no longer knew who I was outside of being married. I was a wife, I was a mother, I did all of this stuff, whether it was yoga or programs or Reiki or whatever it was, it didn't matter. It was all under the safety net of marriage. I had a fail-safe. If it didn't work, there was someone there to catch the fall. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know who I am, and literally walked out of this marriage, and I had not worked in a, shall we call it a workaday world, for 20 years. So I didn't know what to do. And I was at that time presenting prevention programs with a local community mental health center on a part-time basis, very part-time. And it just so happened that the day that I walked out of my marriage, the one of the ladies that was the program manager for this department quit, and they offered me the job. So I said, well, okay, because I have to pay my bills. So, okay, I took this job, and I was presenting programs to high school students, to adolescents, and I truly loved it. And within 2 years, I was offered to take over the entire program, which under the umbrella was a rape crisis support and advocacy services program. So I had a team of volunteers. I still did empowerment or prevention programs. I was speaking in communities. I was educating both advocates, law enforcement, everybody. So that became my wider scope of my job. And I truly enjoyed it. Underneath all of that, I was still dabbling in the, what I call the play-a-day world. So I was teaching yoga, I was doing Reiki and teaching Reiki, and I was also doing what I'm now calling empowerment programs. I didn't call them that at the time. And wondering how I could shift from the workaday world into the be your own boss empowerment world. And we've taught fear. I was terrified because I had to pay my bills and I didn't have a whole big nest egg to fall back on. So I was taking some courses and some programs, and I was actually at a workshop, and we were just brainstorming and playing, and we kind of went into that field of imagination. And someone, we were circulating around the room, and someone came up to me and said, so what is it you do? And I looked at them, and right out of my mouth came, I'm an empowerment specialist. And in that moment, I got it. Everything I did, whether it was at the mental health center, whether it was yoga, whether it was workshops, whether it was all about empowering people. It was giving them the tools to become whom they're meant to be in this world. And then I thought, all right, if that's what I'm doing, who am I meant to become in this world? So I had to start that journey and expand it into my fear zone. What was I really capable of doing? What was my purpose? What was my goal? What was it that I was looking to achieve? And so I just started really working on myself. And lo and behold, several months later, I'm at this conference where I was the guest speaker. And I have written this amazing speech about leaving my marriage with grace and with not fighting and all of this stuff. And the night before this speech, my attorney called, and my former husband and his attorney were bound and determined to make life miserable for me. And they were going to fight over every little nitty bitty whatever. And we talked probably for an hour. And I have to tell you, I did some ranting. I did some anger. I let it come out. And all of a sudden I was just like, whoa, wait a minute. If I continue down this vein, I'm going to live in the fear of lack, because it was all money based. And I said to my attorney, I said, I'm done. You call his attorney and you tell him I will take whatever I am entitled to by law. And other than that, I'm done. And we hung up, and I went to this conference the next day with my speech in hand, all laid out. And I started, and all of a sudden I realized, well, this is no longer true. And literally threw my speech up in the air, and it shattered all over everywhere. And then I just spoke from my heart. And what I realized in that moment, that the most powerful thing that we can do is share from the truth of who we are. Not anything color-coded, sugar-coated, or anything, but who are we? And what is it in our heart that is speaking out? And it was one of the best conferences I'd done. It was truly wonderful. And from there, the rest, shall we say, is history. I started doing more programs. I started putting myself out there a little more, always from the comfort zone of having a job, though. Okay. I no longer had the marriage, but now I had a job. So I knew that those everyday bills were being paid. And then the other stuff was me building a little bit of confidence. And then, you know, you turn a certain age and you think, well, I'd like to retire. So you kind of go into that process of, well, maybe I'll wait till this age. And then you hit that age. And then you think, well, maybe I'll wait till that age. And then I was like, well, maybe I'll wait till I'm 70. And then last year, something happened at our organization. Well, it was outside of our organization, but it would directly affect my program. And in that moment, what I knew was it was time for me to retire. And so I went to the CEO and my director, and we talked about it. And what they said to me was, if you want to stay, we're going to keep this program in place. And I said, let me talk to my team, because they were all volunteers. And they all said, if you're leaving, we're leaving. And we've all been either as an advocate or employed for like 20, 25 years. We're ready to pass the torch. So we decided that we would close our program and pass the torch to this other organization. And so I retired. And then almost immediately it was like, look at what's opened up in my life. And now I'm venturing into this entrepreneurial world with no little safety net underneath me. And I'm having the time of my life. Being on this show is a first for me. It's amazing. I'm just launching next week. It'll be my first little online program regarding the law of attraction. I became really focused and empowered by the law of attraction, became an infinite possibilities trainer, did all of that so that I can share all of that. And here I am talking to you, wonderful ladies, and whoever's out there in the void, I don't know. So that's sort of my story in a nutshell, but it's really discovering who I am underneath all the layers of masks. You have the mask that's a wife, you have the mask that's a mother, you have the mask that is a business person, you have all of these masks, and who are you underneath that? And when I discovered my quirkiness, which people will tell you I've had since I was a little girl, but when I stepped, it kind of goes with the curly hair. When you step into it, when you own it, yes, exactly. When you step into it, you own it, that quirkiness ignites your soul style. Or if you're an artist or you're a writer or whatever you are, when you own it, when you step into that, it ignites you into so much expanded potential and allows you to fully embrace who you're meant to be. So that's sort of what I do now, is just empower people. And all the time, you know, I'm a student of life. So I may be your soul style coach, but make no mistake, I'm learning. Every step that I go, I'm a work in progress. I don't think anybody arrives. I think we're always a continual evolution and flow. We're an expansive creation. So that's sort of my story. That went pretty fast.
I love that one of the last things you said there is, I don't think anybody arrives. And I think that that's such a powerful thing, because I think we're all, you know, continue, especially in this like spiritual world or, you know, personal development world, we're all working and working and working and working. And we feel like, you know, when are we going to get there? And I think if we get that out of our minds of having to arrive somewhere or reach somewhere, that we can just pick little things, just keep going and growing as much as we can. And so I think that's so powerful. I would love to ask you, back when you left your marriage, do you feel like even though it was just another facet of you, do you feel like, doing the things that you were doing like Reiki and yoga, do you feel like those helped you in staying grounded or helping you through that period of transition of leaving your marriage?
Without question, without question. And one of the things that I had done early on, I don't know if you've, it's called The Artist's Way. Has anybody ever heard of that? The Artist's Way. And it's a journaling process. And I went through this program, and you journal every day. And it's a free flow journal. You don't organize your thoughts. You just let it flow. And I thought, I wonder if anybody would be interested in that. And so I put it out there just to my friends, and I ended up with like 12 people that said, I'll come. So we did this program for, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 weeks. And every week they would journal for a week. We'd come back, we'd discuss it. And one day, one of the ladies said to me, so how do you get beyond that? How do you get beyond being stuck? And all of a sudden, I had this vision of this circle. And I said, so what is it you want to be unstuck from? And she gave me whatever it was from her past, and I put it in the center of that circle. And then I saw all these words around the outside of the circle. And it was like who, what, where, when, why, how. It was just like writing a paragraph. And so we started asking those questions and working our way around. And she came to such realizations, personal realizations about why she was feeling this trauma and how to progress from it. Then we started going even deeper about, did she have a role in this? What was her role if she had a role? And moving into what steps can she take now to maybe step beyond what that belief system is or that trauma was or what she could do. And we just kept working around that. So I turned it into what I call the healing wheel. So when I became divorced, one of the things I drug that healing wheel with me, and I worked it. Every time I had those emotional outbursts or burps, that as I call them, or those feeling I'm a victim kind of thing here, I'll never have enough. I started working that wheel. And what I discovered in doing that was that a lot of it had nothing to do with my marriage and belief, and it had more to do with belief systems that I had been programmed to believe. You're never going to have enough. Lack is everywhere. Life is hard. All of those kinds of things. And every time I would have one, I'd start working that wheel. One day, I was literally at the mall, and whatever happened, I don't know, but into my head popped, I'm never going to have enough to buy that, or I'm never going to, whatever it was, it doesn't matter. But all of a sudden the wheel popped in my head, walking through the mall, I'm mentally working this wheel, and I'm working through it so that I can see where my roadblock is. I can see where I'm stuck. And then once you see where you're stuck, now you have a choice. You can choose to remain stuck, or you can choose to look for different options, different ways to move forward in your life. And then it becomes, as a speech teacher once said to me, inch by inch is a cinch, by the yard is hard. Don't look at where you want to be down the road or where you think you should be now. Look at where you are and ask yourself, what's one thing you can do to move yourself forward in this moment? And then before you know it, you turn around and you're like, holy cow, look where I am now. And that literally is how I began to move through the trauma of leaving my marriage. This is a marriage I thought 25 years together, I thought we would be together forever. I actually questioned whether or not I should leave. It was, for me, the ultimate betrayal. I wasn't sure I could get beyond it. And one day, I'm working the wheel and I'm trying to understand whether or not, because I really didn't discuss it with people, I needed this to be my decision. And so I was like, I need a sign. I need to know, is this what I'm meant to do? Do I stay? Do I leave? And clear as a bell, I heard this voice in my ear, and it said, if you stay, you sell a little piece of your soul. And I got it. In that moment, I got it. If I stayed, it would be for safety, for security. It wouldn't be because I could get beyond it. It wouldn't be because of any of that. It would be because of fear. And so I made the decision to leave. And then I had to go through that process of reclaiming myself, that part of me that I had forgotten about. The little girl that was quirky and danced in the rain and jumped in puddles and, had this really ridiculously crazy hair, and becoming okay with that. So when I work with other people, it's like, you are unique into yourself. There's nobody else on this planet like you. Let's figure out who you are underneath all of the camouflage. So that was a long answer.
So I love that you're taking, you mentioned that you took it away from the victim mode, and, instead of blaming the circumstances outside of you, you brought it back to you and what could you do? So if somebody's listening and they're in a circumstance where they're feeling in that victim mode and, they're bogged down by that, you talked about the wheel, but could you give us maybe one tiny little practical step that they could do that will help move them from looking outside of themselves to looking inside of themselves, where they do actually have power to make some changes?
Sure, absolutely. And I'm going to go back to all of the training from being a rape crisis advocate and running that program. When a crime occurs, when a trauma occurs, when something happens in that moment, you're the victim. But the moment it's over, if you're still breathing, you're a survivor. So whether you go bankrupt, okay, maybe in that moment you feel like a victim, you've lost all your money. But the moment the bankruptcy court ends, you're no longer a victim. Now you're a survivor. You survived that. If you just look at those two words, survivor, think how empowering the word survivor is. Now, what happens is we get locked into being a survivor. But when you're a survivor, there's, you have a sense of strength. So that inner strength and calming might just be saying to yourself, I can do this. It might be as simple as having a friend that says, you've got this. But you're feeling inside, there's a little feeling, even if it's a nugget, the size of, as we say, a mustard seed, there's a little nugget of courage. So when we face that fear, when we're in that fear mode, like, I don't want to do that. What if this happens again? Stop for a moment, pause, breathe into that fear, and let courage come up behind you and show you how to do it. Don't be afraid to ask yourself, why do I feel fear in this moment? Is this fear attached to a prior belief system, a prior trauma, a prior something that happened to me? Or is this a genuine fear in this moment? And if it's attached to a belief system or something behind you, 3 things I say that not Mike Dooley, but Andy Dooley will say all the time: stop, cancel, clear. Get the fear out of here. Stop, cancel, clear. Change my thoughts here. It can be that simple. And that's going to, inch by inch,
move you forward into recognizing that you don't have to be locked in to what happened in the past, to your belief systems, to any of that, and that you do have a choice in life. And that when you shift that thinking, the universe is out there choreographing events, people, places, things to come into your life and move you forward. And as you become a survivor, you begin to find joy in the little things. So if you find yourself being able to smile, you're already moving into survivorship. What you want to do is get out of survivor and move into wholeness. You want to be able to step into that greater picture and say, all right, now what? In Japanese kanji, there's a little, well, I call it a symbol, but they call it a word, but it's crisis. And in kanji, it has two meanings. Crisis means danger and opportunity. So no matter what your crisis is, leaving a marriage, what's my danger in that? I won't have any money. I'll end up on Skid Row or a bag lady. That could be a pretty dangerous thing in some people's thought process. But what's the opportunity here? Mm-hmm. The opportunity is to live my own life, my own belief system, my own unique soul style, and discovering what that is outside of anything else. If it's a trauma related crisis, maybe it is a sexual assault, or maybe it's domestic violence, or maybe it's battery of some other kind, or being robbed at gunpoint. That's the trauma, the crisis. There's danger in that immediately, but what's the opportunity after that? If we move into wholeness, we tend to start looking at, all right, now I'm going to take all of this experience and I'm going to bring it in and I'm going to say, now what? What do I do with this? Because I think we have these experiences in our life, and I know that it's probably going to raise some red flags for people, but going to say it anyway. We have some traumas in our life that are pretty horrific, but we have them for an empowerment of ourselves. Are we going to stay a victim? Are we going to stay a victim of that trauma? Are we going to move into being a survivor and say, I got this? Or are we going to look at this and say, how do I bring this into my life to better somebody else? And that's the broader picture. And I think that one thing, if I were going to give you one thing, when you start going down the runaway fear train track, when you start going and being stuck in that victim mode, stop, cancel, clear. Get the fear out of here. Get that thought out of here. Change my perspective, whatever it is that you need to say. But I think Andy Dooley's got it spot on when he says stop, cancel, clear. Get that fear out of here.
Yeah, I love that, Kathy. And I want to give Siri an opportunity, because we're getting really low on time, to ask a question, because Siri's our trauma mama on the show too. And so Siri, go ahead with your question.
So Kathy, I wished I had met you back in 2005. I'd have saved myself a whole lot of trouble. So what one word of advice would you give for people who are just coming out of some kind of trauma? Where do you start?
I think journaling is good.
Journaling.
I also think you need someone to talk to, whether it is a therapist. I worked at a mental health center. My tagline was always, I am not a therapist. I work with therapists. So whether you need a therapist, maybe what you need is a life coach, someone that can help you with those little innuendos of life, give you the questions and the movement forward to help you see your life in a different perspective. So I would say journal, get your thoughts down, find someone that you can talk to, take those steps that bring you joy. especially when you start going back into that train of thought of what happened to you, or if you're continually asking yourself, why me, why me, why me, I would just shift that question. And I would shift that question into more of, okay, this happened. What am I going to do with it?
Mm-hmm.
Because that what am I going to do with it speaks of potential.
What am I supposed
rather
to do?
than the victimization. So
there's been so many good points, Kathy, that you talked about today. We could have a manual summary for people who are going through these changes in their lives and really trying to find themselves. I would love for you to finish us off today and just share with us, what is that briefly, what does that soul style mean to you? What is that, finding that soul style?
Soul style means that you have really done some inner work. So you have dived into who and what and why you are. And you also are identifying within yourself those things that make you unique. So when you start stepping into your soul style, you're stepping into what I believe is your full potential, your life expression, life, love in full expression. Mm. When you step into that, all your uniqueness, whether you're an artist or whether you're a business person, it doesn't matter. But whatever it is that, okay, so for lack of a better word, juices you, it like charges you. That's where you need to be. That's what you need to be doing. That's what you need to be giving to the world.
Mm-hmm. Where's your juicy girl Tara when we need her? Yeah. We always call her a juicy girl. As soon as you said that, I said, man, why is she
it's like, what plugs you into that electrical current? And it's like, oh yeah, this is what I do. And then you're finding you're moving into that soul style. Mm. And, you get so filled with gratitude and so filled with joy, it seeps out of your pores. Mm-hmm. My grandson, 6 years old, bless his little pea-picking heart, at Christmas time, we went around the table to say what we were grateful for. And he went around the table and he said, I love you, and I love you, and I love you, and I love you, and I love you. And all of a sudden he's crying. And, his parents were concerned, well, what's wrong? What's wrong? And he said, my heart is so full, it's seeping out my eyes. Oh. Exactly. This is a 6-year-old. Okay. Now, when you get that full, you're living your potential. You're living your life. You are in gratitude, and you're going to get more things from the universe to be grateful for. And you are going to fully step in to your soul style.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Kathy, for sharing with us today. We've really enjoyed your story, and I think there's so many good things that people can take from listening to this today, and have a good idea of how to tap into and start finding that soul style. So thank you again, Kathy, for being here and sharing your story with us.
My pleasure. It has been a joy and a treat, and I have enjoyed this momentously. So thanks so much. And I'll just hang out here now.
Awesome. All right, ladies. So we don't have a whole lot of time left today, but I wanted to get a quick good moment, aha moment from each of you guys about a takeaway that you had from Kathy's story today. And I'm really glad you were on this as a panelist today too, Lori-Ann, because I know that you have a similar background story. And so I saw your head nodding, and I'm like, I think she's hearing a lot of similarities.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, she was almost telling my same story, except I had 3 children with me when I was starting over. Yeah. But I think I loved the way she kept bringing it back to how can we grow from this experience? Because, stuff happens to us in life that sometimes we can't control. but we can always control what we do with that. And we have a choice to get stuck in the negative or get stuck in that victim role. Or we have a choice to, like she said, look beyond that and say, well, what can I create now? What can come good out of that? And I loved that that just kept coming up in so many different ways. So the therapist and the coach in me, because I'm both, right, or have been in my life, loved that whole positive shift on that. It's just, we can't say that enough to people, that you're not the only one going through stuff. You're going to go through things in life. Really, it's all about what do you do with it when it happens, and how you can come out, even if you had a wonderful life, into an equally wonderful life, or maybe a better one. So I love that.
I agree. What about you, Siri?
I felt like she was reading my book. I went through the same thing after a 23-year marriage, and it's amazing how we all go through those things. But the thing that really was an aha moment for me, and like I said, I wished I'd have met her, and back in 2005, she would have saved me 10 years of struggling through that victim mentality. No, seriously, the victim mentality, you get so entrenched in that to the point where you can't see anything beyond that, and you end up in bad relationships, and just because you're looking for validation again. And the masks, I love the mask, because that's exactly how I felt. I had all these masks on, and then when I pulled them, when they were ripped off me, it was like, okay, now what do I do with myself? Who am I? And I had to go through the struggle of learning who I was. And yes, I'm quirky, just like she is.
You picked the right panelist, I think, today.
I know, it worked out really well.
Divine order.
I tell everybody I'm unique.
Wow.
Absolutely.
It was awesome. I really liked it.
Yeah, I was thinking about the reason I asked the question I did about, did she feel like the Reiki and the yoga and the other spiritual tools that she was using really helped her during that time? Because like I've been on the side of that I was on when I got divorced was that, if somebody would have said soul style to me, I would have been like, okay, whatever. And and like I didn't have any of the tools then that I have now. And I think about that a lot, like how much easier would it have been for me? Like, what would the experience have been like had I had all these tools? And it really goes back to what we talk about so often on the show. And that's that if you haven't had like one of these traumatic things happen in your life yet, whether it's an accident, we've talked about this show, divorce. Next week, we're going to be talking about losing a child and pregnancy and all of that. And so if you haven't had one of these moments, like, don't think that you don't need these tools, because these things are so important to have someone to talk to have some kind of either spirituality or relationship with your higher self, what is something in your life that is helping you through all of these things, so that when these breakthrough moments happen, when these traumatic things happen, you have support. How much I can think of so many different things, and I'm sure you guys too, of instances where if you knew what you knew now, or if you had a tool of what you knew now, and how it might have been different. And it's not to diminish, again, the journey that we go through by any means. I believe things that happen the way they're supposed to, but having these tools is just so important. So the things that we talk about on this show, find out about them, see if they'll work for you, work them into your life now before the stuff hits the fan, if you will.
Yeah, because I think, we're a good example here. There was a couple of y'all that didn't have it. And then Kathy and I both were coming from spaces where we did have those tools. Mm-hmm. And I know that having those tools really shortened the process for me of going through what I went through, moving on, and being in the space I'm now. It didn't seem like a short process at the time, but looking back, it was a relatively short period of time from where I ended up to where I, was. And it was because I had those tools and I knew, and I had the support system and I had the people to talk to. So I like that there's that balance here, that we can kind of actually speak from personal experience, not having the tools and having the tools, and seeing the difference that makes.
Absolutely. I like the perspective that it brings from each of us on the show. And that's one of the things that we love about this show, because we all have a different perspective or view, which I think is really cool. All right, guys. So we come to the end of our show for today, but we are super thankful for Catherine Dwyer for being on the show today. Thank you so much, Catherine, for sharing your story. And I'm, of course, thankful for our beautiful panelists. I want to send another hi and hug to Tara, who couldn't be with us today, but we also had Lorianne Davis, our relationship specialist, and Siri Ridenauer, our mama bear extraordinaire, helping us through our traumatic things in our lives. So thank you, ladies, both for being with us today. Next week on the show, we have someone local to me. She actually lives just right down the road, and we hang out outside of this Facebook Live here, which is cool. Kate Petty is going to be with us on the show. She's a realtor, and she's also a mom of two, and she's going to be sharing with us her experience of when she lost her daughter just a couple hours after birth. She has been such a powerhouse and voice for the movement to legalize midwifery here in Alabama, and I'm really just thrilled to have her on the show to share her story, and we will be welcoming back Lorianne Davis next week as a panelist, and we'll have Shoshana Chaim on as well. So really excited about that. And our hot topic next week is going to be a hot topic. So you're going to want to tune in for that, for sure. It's a surprise, and it's going to be a hot one. So make sure you tune in for that. Until next week, my name is Jessica Dugas, Intuitive Mentor, and we'll see you next week on The Breakthrough. Same time, same place. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Blessings.